Alex Storako joins the show to break down the Red River Rivalry in Austin. What happened? Coming up on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's the Alex Storako Show here on Locked On Sooners. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. That's Josh Helmer. You can follow him at JoshOnRef. And Alex, you can follow her. Of course, you already do at Alex Storako, but also go check out her merch store at alexstorako.com. And hey, what a weekend of softball it was. You know, if you're just a fan of the sport, you were treated to a top 5 matchup that absolutely lived up to the hype. You know, I don't think anybody expected Oklahoma to go into Austin and lose a series, but sometimes it's just what happens when you play a top 5 team. A Texas team that was second in the nation in ERA, was a top 5 offense, one of the best hitting teams in the country. So Alex, just talk through your initial reaction and just your initial takeaways from what happened down in Austin between Oklahoma and Texas this weekend.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it was such a great matchup in a lot of different ways. Obviously, one of their strengths was pitching, and one of OU's strengths is their lineup. And so to see that battle come to fruition of, you know, who is going to outperform the other, I think it was really exciting. I think half the time of the series, like, I was on my couch, like, standing and yelling at the TV. And so I think that's just a common thing for the weekend when it comes to, especially, you know, adding the rivalry into it, playing it down in Austin in such a rowdy weekend. I think, you know, there was a lot that came, you know, to the scene when it came down to it, and a lot of learning points that OU is going to come home to. And, you know, they're right back at it with, you know, that midweek game against Wichita State. So there's just so much that goes into it. And so I'm excited to really break it down.
Well, what did you make about Oklahoma's pitchers in the series? It's kind of crazy. You know, look, everybody wants excellence, and when OU loses a couple of games, you're hearing comments like, well, the pitching's a problem. It's like, what? They gave up 6 runs in this series. But what did you make? I thought Kelly Maxwell, you know, obviously the first game was really good. Final game was good, and Nicole May had a nice start for OU as well. But what did you think about the Sooners in the circle?
I honestly think our pitching did really well, in the fact of, you know, Kelly obviously was the star of the show this weekend. And when she was called on, she performed, and she got it done on that first game on Friday. And her line was, you know, insane. I mean, I think when you play a top 5 match and in your pitching staff, you know, only allows 2 runs each game to, you know, a really hot team, I think that's a great performance in my mind, because you're coming into a team that, you know, is supposed to have those offensive numbers to back up your pitching staff. And so as a staff, when you're only giving up 6 runs a weekend, I don't think that's a bad weekend in my mind. I think it all just kind of climbed kind of together. Obviously, we got a little lucky with, you know, the call on Saturday kind of going back. It could have been a 4-1 game instead of a 2-1 game. So when you kind of add in those factors, I really don't think our pitching did that bad. Like, people are going up in arms, just coming out with the just craziest takes on, you know, social media and everything. Kelly just absolutely backed everything that she is. And so I was pumped for her. And I don't think Nicole May had a bad outing either. She had 2 hits that really kind of strung together for Texas, and that was the difference maker. So when you put all that together, I really saw, honestly, a good showing from the pitchers. I think, you know, Kirsten Deal could have been left out there maybe a little longer. I understand the matchup part of it. But when she was brought into game 3, she didn't do a bad job either. I mean, she put zeros across the boards. And so when you ask that of your pitching staff, you get that in return. And so I think, you know, the pitching staff really did well this weekend, considering some people's interesting takes on Twitter. And obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased too, but when you look at it from a pitcher's perspective and a coaching staff perspective and not a fan, it changes a lot of parts to, the game.
Yes, the expectations at Oklahoma are high. Winning every single game is the standard. But if you were a softball coach for any team in America, from youth ball to the professional level on the international stage, and you were to tell them, hey, Oklahoma's pitching staff is going to only allow 6 runs against Texas in Austin this weekend, how do you imagine that series is going to go? And I think most people would expect Oklahoma's going to win the series, if not sweep the series. And so the pitching staff was they did their job. I mean, they did everything that you asked them to do. Kelly Maxwell, through the first 6 innings on Friday night, had allowed 1 walk and 1 hit. Things got a little bit interesting there in the bottom of the 7th, but she came through and she finished the job. And then again on Sunday, she was really, really good again. Just gave up the 2-run home run to Katie Stewart, who's got that crazy power, apparently breaks window kind of power. So your pitching staff did exactly what you asked of them. And I think that's a good sign for Oklahoma moving forward as we consider, okay, how does the rest of the season go? I think you spoke to Nicole May's performance, but she's kind of been that underrated piece of the pitching staff. What did you see from Nicole May on Saturday in that game? Again, it's a big time showdown for the Sooners, but she came through and she was a really good part of that pitching rotation this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, in her numbers, she has, 6 strikeouts in the 4 2/3 innings pitched. And, that's, when you're in the grand scheme of it, that's what Nicole is kind of known for. I think this season, everyone has been kind of shocked. She's given up a little bit more hits than usual. But when you see her kind of put out a little bit more of a strikeout number, that's her bread and butter when she's going to her pitches. And I feel like this season she hasn't really gone to her strengths a whole lot. And so when I see that out of her in a lot of these, gritty situations, I love that. That's exciting. And just kind of building into what she is and who she is as a pitcher on the mound. So I was excited for that. She only had 1 walk, and a big part of this series was not giving, free bases and everything. She gave up 5 hits, and in reality, only 2 of them really strung together. So when you think about it, she was tough as nails as well. And so I'm going to defend Nicole May till the day that she's graduated, because she has been such a core part of, the Sooner success. And when you think of it, and they were talking, I feel like the announcers in some way were kind of jinxing her because they just kept talking about her success. I mean, this is her first Big 12 loss in her career. I mean, she's played 5 years for OU. And so to have that kind of stat, I think is just nuts. And so, I will defend her and her ability on that mound for forever, because she has been such a core piece of, the pitching staff in a lot of ways other than just on the mound.
Well, the streaks for Oklahoma in this, can you just speak to, and probably we've done a lot of this over the course of this year with you, Alex, here on Locked On Sooners, but it's the first series loss to Texas since 2009. It's Oklahoma's first ever conference series loss when it's a 3-game set, and that's been around since 2012. It's their first Big 12 series loss since 2011. What do you make of that? I mean, that's incredible when you think about that, and obviously you played this sport for years and years. The consistency there that Oklahoma even was in the position for that to be the case. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm just in awe, quite literally, because if you think about it, you bring those years and those numbers up, and I'm thinking about it, like I was just getting into travel ball around that time. So when you put that into just your thought process of how long it's truly been, that's nuts. That's crazy. I mean, there's been so much that has gone in between those times. And I think, when failure comes, people are so quick to jump on the failure when instead of reflecting on how much positive that has gone on since then. I mean, this isn't going to take, Oklahoma Sooners out of, the 4-peat contention. This is, the first time that they've had 3 losses in I don't know how long either. And so when you bring it back to it, post-COVID, Oklahoma Sooner softball fans have had it so unbelievably good that any breath of mistake is like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to act. So I think when you take it into perspective with those numbers and those streaks, it's like, okay, we can settle down. It's okay to be human, even though this program doesn't show human qualities a whole lot.
Fun. You're absolutely right. This program has seemed superhuman. It's like when you watch Captain America, taking one on the chin, you're like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to happen. He's supposed to bounce back and defeat everybody. No, this program has set such a high standard that, any sense of, I don't even want to call it weakness, but any stumble, anytime it stumbles, it's shocking. And I think the rest of the softball world feels that too, like, what, Oklahoma lost? That's just absolutely crazy. Oklahoma lost a series. That doesn't happen either. And I think there's a way to react to that. It's like just appreciating the level of success that we've gotten to see from this team. And in a way that kind of is also what makes what happened at the plate so surprising, because they have become the offensive standard for so many years. Let's talk about what happened at the plate, how Texas was able to minimize the damage from Oklahoma's hitters. Coming up next with Alex Storako here on Locked On Sooners.
It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel. It's your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. That's with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And those over/under win totals for Oklahoma football, still 7.5. If you like Oklahoma to go over like I do, and some points that you're getting in the Red River game, if you like that, like I do too. Oklahoma getting 9.5 points, and underdog to Texas. Those are the only numbers they have out in terms of games for next season for OU. But that's with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.
Alex Storako joins us weekly here on Locked On Sooners, so make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. So, Alex, what did you make of Oklahoma's performance at the plate? I mean, it was a bit of a power outage. This was a team that averaged almost 5 extra base hits per game coming into the series, and they were kept under 2 extra base hits. They had only 5 total in the 3-game set. So what did you make of it? Was it just it wasn't there for Oklahoma, or Texas just really had a great game plan to attack the Sooners hitters?
I think, all apply when you take in the fact of Texas is not known for their defense, and they had probably their best weekend in I don't know how long on defense. I think that adds to it. Oklahoma, they put the ball in play. It's not like it was a high strikeout series. They put the ball in play, and Texas made the plays that they're supposed to, and that's what it comes down to. I feel like there was nothing that OU was able to really capitalize on. I feel like usually in those moments, maybe there's a bobble and someone is called safe, and then that's when they start to build and they start to get bigger than life in a lot of ways. And so they never truly had that moment. Mia Scott down at third base had probably the weekend of her life, truthfully, because she didn't bobble, she didn't overthrow. She was perfect when it came down to the defensive end. And it's like I said, they weren't swinging and missing a whole lot. They were putting the ball in play and putting the pressure on, and Texas just handled that pressure really well when it comes down to it, because their defense is down in the 165th nationally. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to take my chances with a lot of this. And I think that plays into some other big plays from the weekend. But I think Texas pitchers did really well of keeping them off balance, not really knowing, what's coming at them. And I know OU does so much in film and everything, but it turns into a whole nother game once you see it, in person, in the box, and, you start to play head games with yourself. And especially too, I feel like in this sense, OU doesn't find themselves behind a whole lot. And so when you have that pressure of having to kind of climb out of a hole, you get those swing and misses that aren't usual, like from, Riley Boone or Jada Coleman, or maybe some of the freshmen that are inexperienced in that sense too. And so you see that, and all just kind of adds together. And I think that's when it comes down to, this lineup not producing like it usually does.
obviously the Texas pitchers, the defense you touched on, you just have to tip the cap. They were really, really good against a great Oklahoma team for a couple of games in this. Gutierrez, Kavan, Check. What did you see from that trio of pitchers from Texas? What impressed you?
Yeah, I think with a young staff, when it comes down to it, obviously Stelcheck has been around and has that experience under her belt. And so she came in crucial in those experienced veteran wanted moments. But Kavan is your freshman that's been, kind of lights out for a lot of the year. Gutierrez is a sophomore, still, figuring out her ways. But when you have those young pitchers, in my mind, having not only just, their good stuff, but they have 3 different speeds. And so when you bring 3 different speeds into an offensive game, it's a whole different ball game. And so I know, Mike White does so well with transforming his pitchers into just adding additional part of the game that you don't really see a whole lot across the country within college softball. So I think that just adds to their pitching game when you really break it down, and keeping those big offensive, lineups like OU on their heels.
How much does luck play into it sometimes too? Because Oklahoma had a couple hard hit balls that went like right at the pitcher or, right at the infielder. And then they ended up getting doubled up, or we can talk about the play at the plate in game 2 of the series where, okay, Riley hits a rocket, hits the center field wall. And Maya Bland, who's got great speed. I mean, she's leading Oklahoma in stolen bases or second in stolen bases on the team, and creates a play at the plate. A lot of lucky defensive plays. You go back, even game 3, you watch back the highlight, that final out of the game, Texas tried to run into each other again for like the 3rd or 4th time in that series and were able to hold on to the ball. So how much does some of that luck factor play into it? I know we don't like to talk about luck in sports, but sometimes it's just you're lucky and unlucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, plays a role in it. And, that play at the plate, I think, is a toss-up in a lot of other games. I've seen so many other plays that are very similar to that, and it's called a different way. And so it's like, what goes in as factors? Reese Atwood did such a good job at holding on to the ball because that could have completely changed the game as well. Especially with such a collision like that, you haven't seen that in softball in a really long time. So it adds to the excitement, and maybe in not the way that OU wanted to, obviously. But there's so many things, like you said, that just went the wrong way, or there was a lucky hop that just went into a glove, or a good bounce off the wall. Texas's center fielder, she's a freshman. She made some great plays that maybe a freshman center fielder usually doesn't make. Usually you see them out of a veteran, Jada Coleman from OU. So when you have the scripts a little flipped, it does play into that in a lot of ways.
So with the understanding that a good portion of our audience might feel some sort of way about the rule, given the way that this past weekend played out, how do you feel about the change to the obstruction rule? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? What do you think of it?
Gosh, I feel like this could put my head on a platter at times, but I feel like part of the excitement is those big plays at the plate. Let it play out. And I feel like obstruction leads to safety, yes, but I feel like that's a core part of the game. A catcher is a catcher for that reason. They want those plays. They grew up dreaming about those plays in a way. And I think it takes a little bit out of it in a lot of ways, just like the whole rule change of allowing to review a runner leading off early on a play that may not even apply to the runner. I mean, it happened in both ways this weekend with Kinsey Hansen, then also a Texas runner on one of their big hits that took off runs off the board. And so I've seen it across college softball in a lot of ways. And it's like, do you have those league of their own moments where, will a catcher drop a ball? Where's the throw taking them? I mean, in all reality, that play at the plate, and I understand Coach Gasso and why she sent Maya Bland. In a way, it's almost like, okay, if Kinsey ran for herself, she's not even making it home. We're at second and third, and we have Jada Coleman, one of the hottest hitters in the last 2 weeks up to bat. So Maya Bland being so fast could have hurt us in a way, in some way, shape, or form. But I see why coach sent her in the way of Texas is 165th defensively. They have to make a perfect relay, and they have to, keep the ball in the glove and not get called for obstruction. And for all of those things to go so well for them, it's like, what can you do in that sense? So I know I still probably haven't answered it, but I think play the game like it was supposed to be played.
Yeah, that was going to be kind of my follow-up, is just what do players that you've talked to, or what do the people that you've played with have to say about obstruction? Because you're right, like, take the umpires out of it, let the players make the plays and decide it on the field, as opposed to deciding it in the rule book. So what do the people that you talk to, how do they feel about obstruction?
Gosh, I feel like it's like kind of that taboo question. I don't really ask a whole bunch. I know like the topic that I've talked to with alumni more recently was the leaving early, because it's a big thing. I know Nicole Mendez put out a tweet about it recently. I just talked to, Haley Lee and Kaylee Clifton about it in the last couple of days of like, what do you guys think? And there's a lot of takes on, social media that go back and forth, and it's like, okay, well, don't leave early. And I totally understand that, but it's like, you take those moments that are difference makers off the board. You take that excitement off of whichever team made the play kind of deal. And there's so much about the excitement and just the momentum swings that are a big part of softball, because of it just being a sport too. I know with basketball more recently, I've been able to watch a lot more with the postseason. It's like, this isn't a game you can't, dribble in the corner and run the clock out. You are down to your last strike, and you have to throw that pitch. You have to, give the other team a chance in a way. And that's, I think, why I love the sport is, you have to play it so to a T to be successful. And I think that's another thing that, the success of OU brings a lot of people kind of to a jaw-dropping mindset of, oh, well, we win all the time kind of deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like replay in a sense, and it's been a good evolution to add it in certain ways. At the same time, man, it definitely does bog down games in every sport, whether it's college hoops, softball, baseball, football. Sometimes I would like to go back in time to where we didn't have as much replay that can slow down and halt momentum so much in games. But hey, we're going to end this on a high note, because Oklahoma's season is not done. Contrary to what you might believe after a series loss for the first time in 13 years, Oklahoma still has a lot to play for. How do they respond? We're going to ask Alex that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Get into the game with Gametime. It is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. You can go check it out right now. It's got a great app, great website. You can go to gametime.co. You can also go download the app in your app store and get an opportunity to look at some last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, and views from all seats in the venue. So you know exactly what you're going to be looking at from your seat. You don't got to worry about obstruction. You don't got to worry about what the angle is going to look like, because Gametime gives you a preview of how you're going to be seeing the game. So go download the Gametime app right now. I'm looking at, hey, we just got new information that the Oklahoma game against Temple to open the season is moving to a Friday night. We get primetime on ESPN to open the season. Some great deals right now through Gametime. I'm seeing as low as $37. You can get some lower level seats right now, $82. Looking at, what is that? Section 120 or section 29 right now for as low as $82. So great opportunities to get in at the game over at Gametime. Go download the app now. Use promo code Locked On College, where you can get all in pricing. You can get great seat views, the lowest price guarantee. So go download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So the Oklahoma Sooners, they dropped in the USA Softball ESPN poll to number 2. They maintained number 1 in the NFCA USA Today coaches poll. D1 Softball America dropped them also. But this is still the team to beat in college softball. The national title, number 1 contender. Everybody's gunning for Oklahoma. So, Alex, how do they respond? They got the big midweek matchup with Wichita State coming. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon before this game. But with BYU coming, a good offensive team, how do the Sooners respond?
I think they just kind of stick to their core when it comes to, making things happen and continuing to make the defense work that you're playing. I think they're on the right track. You're not seeing a whole bunch of home runs like you were seeing earlier, maybe in the season. But I feel like just they can't get passive when it comes to the plate, and staying in control of the offensive game instead of letting a defense or a pitcher take control of them in a lot of ways. Whether that's, I didn't really see a lot of small ball game, even though, we have those tools as an offense. I didn't see it when, people were struggling in that sense. So making sure you're not forgetting about the tools that you have in the toolbox and thinking you have to rely on, the big hit or, an over the fence swing. I think, getting it done offensively has to do with, keeping the ball on the ground, find the holes and, using everything that you can to get it done, and the home runs will come. And I think that's kind of maybe where they've maybe gotten away of, like, in the past they've gotten, those close games and it's like a home run, that's what's going to do it. A home run's going to do it. I feel like they've gotten out of rhythm of passing the bat and really going, batter to batter within at-bats. So that's a big one. Keeping up the consistency within pitching, I think, is huge. I think probably tonight with the Wichita State game, I'm going to expect maybe Kirsten Deal or Carly Keeney when it comes to it. And just being able to pass the ball defensively as well and being consistent and not giving up the free bases. I think that's what's going to hurt the Sooners defensively the most. And so if you keep runners off the bases with free passes, that's going to be your biggest part of, getting back to the win column.
Backtracking just a smidge to last week, Alex, before we get out of here, just physically, what did you think of how Kinsey Hansen looked as obviously back into the lineup, behind the plate? How did she look to you?
I mean, I thought she looked pretty darn amazing considering she was ramped up with an inning last week and then was like, hey, we're going to go 3 full games. So for her to have that, there was obviously a lot of work behind the scenes, getting her geared up for that. But to no shock, she looked great behind the plate. In my mind, she was on top of it. She was getting anything that she could and doing everything. And she was also the best hitter statistically this weekend. So, I mean, maybe everyone just needs a little break when it comes down to it. But, I didn't think she skipped a beat.
No, Kinsey Hansen seems always ready to go, always ready to come through in a big moment. Final question here. Now you have 4 teams within, 3-4 games of each other now in the Big 12 standings. Texas holds the tiebreaker over Oklahoma. How big is that Bedlam series to close out the season in Norman?
I mean, it just amplified by like a million when it comes down to it. I'm excited for the Cowgirls to come down to Love's Field, and I hope everyone just absolutely brings their energy for that first weekend of May. Obviously, it's going to kickstart that postseason, but it's going to add so much little detail when it comes down to the final parts of the Big 12 race. And I don't think we've had a super competitive, Big 12 like this in a while. So I'm excited to see how it goes out. Lexi Kilfoyle is continuing to perform at her best. So I really hope these next, couple of weeks are really them just like kind of putting this in the past and continuing to build on the positives of what they have going on.
Yeah, there's going to be a great opportunity to potentially get a Kelly Maxwell, Lexi Kilfoyle matchups on Friday and Sunday in that series. So tell me how you feel just about what's happening across softball, because as I'm looking through social media and I'm looking at Tennessee and I'm, looking, at Arkansas and Alabama, you're just seeing constantly attendance records for weekends being set. How cool is that as a player, just seeing the sport continue to grow, not just in Norman, but everywhere?
I think that's so cool. I think this weekend, for some reason, had just a big old circle around it for all conferences. I mean, you saw the Florida LSU series really go into a rubber match. The Georgia Arkansas series went into another one, or maybe it was Georgia Tennessee. I can't remember. But when you see so many places around the country go into that, I mean, it is just so exciting because not only is OU growing the game, but there's so many other people falling in love with their own programs, other places. And so I love that. That's just exposing, the next generation even more. So I'm excited for that and just, here to keep building it in any way I can.
Yeah, hopefully a fully built college softball creates a bigger women's professional fast pitch down the road as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex Storacco. Go check out her merch store at alexstoracco.com. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef and myself at John9Williams. But until next time, she's Alex, he's Josh, I'm John. Boomer.
Sooner.